Hello, hello, hello. This is Tina Michelle, and welcome to Tina Speaks. Now, sometimes on this show, we have fun, we have great conversations about life, transformation, everything from the inside out. Because you know what I believe, that change is not an event. It's a process, but the decision to change begins right now. So get your pen and your piece of paper. We're going to talk about something that maybe you don't want to deal with. Maybe you don't even want to know that this exists, but you have to. You have to. Let me tell you my history with this conversation, violence in our streets, very quickly. People used to joke with me because I was raised in Tarrytown, New York. And so people would say, are you watching New Jack City or Steel Magnolia? It was like a measuring stick of where you were. And honestly, I'm related to Steel Magnolias because I was raised in the South. And I was raised, in a very specific type of environment. I didn't understand gangs. I didn't understand any of that. Until recently have my consciousness been seared with the question of what's happening with our kids and what are they living through right now. Working with Compton High School has really, really, really taken my heart and say, what are these children really contending with on a daily basis? So today on Tina Speaks, we have a wonderful guest today, Malik Spellman, and he's going to give us an inside view, a snapshot into what's really happening in this country. And we want to answer the question, is it isolated to only specific areas, specific people, specific times, or is it spreading? Maybe something you want to check out. Invite 4 or 5 friends to watch. We'll be right back here on Tina Speaks.
This is a warrior's chant. The sound of the battle, the cry, a movement of people. This is our way to freedom.
Okay, we're back, and that is I Am Isis, IamIsis.com. Beautiful Isis Stefanata Harmon is a very good friend of mine, and she's very conscious. She's coming out of Brooklyn, New York. Very talented, what they call neo-soul / Afro-punk artist that is conscious about what's happening in community. So, as I love to promote our independent artists, and she's one of the ones that I always support every time something comes out. So we're back here, and my guest is with me. How are you, Malik?
I'm fine. How are you today, Tina?
Thank you for being with me today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Well, this whole conversation, not to sound as ignorant as I am about it, has been searing my heart because I know that my parents did whatever they had to do, my mother in particular, to make sure I was safe. I was raised in the projects, but in Westchester, and I had to fight going to school, fight coming back from school. I always had to push through everything, and it wasn't necessarily because of gangs or anything. It was just around race. It was around economics. It was around classism. But when I see what these kids deal with today, I don't even know what to say anymore. I mean, I moved clear across the country so my daughter and my son would have the best education possible. And I don't see that with kids. I don't see the parental investment. I don't think the parents can invest that way. Tell me what's going on. I mean, the violence, the drugs, the dropout rates, it just seems so overwhelming to me. I don't even know where to begin to help this next generation.
Well, one of the significant things that you've done thus far in regards to this matter is that you reared your children in the right direction, and you've accepted that opportunity to be a parent in order to bring in a better human being into this world, and you did your part. Whereas in some instances, circumstances don't allow other parents to have that same opportunity to rear their children in the right direction, and then they succumb to violence because of not the choices that they make in regards to their daily activities, but the choices that was made before them, long before they got here. If you look at the overwhelming amount of children today who are dropping out of school and the children that are getting hurt in violence, you'll see that, like in this particular area of Los Angeles, from say the Harbor Freeway back to Crenshaw or something, you have a 1,023 chance of getting killed. Or, the average kid don't know that a gang murder costs the taxpayers $1 million from bullet to burial, where the courts get a certain amount and then other people get their issue. The best way to prevent your children from being harmed by violence is to really listen to them and to watch their daily activities and to watch their friends in such a way that you have to become that guardian over them as well.
Well, this week I was really thinking about, I took a mental health week, so I took off a week. And this week I was really thinking about these kids. I mean, I've really fallen in love with one of the initiatives I'm working on with the Dakar Foundation over at Compton High School, and really trying to get the kids more information, more technology, just more access. To be part of the science, technology, education initiative there. So we did a great event. We brought the lowriders in. They got to see how hydraulics works. We showed them what it means to break a car down officially, right? We took them to the Indy 500 pit, virtually. These kids showed up. I mean, there must have been, the whole auditorium was full at Compton High School, which they said voluntary attendance is rare. So I was just blessed by that. I knew it wasn't enough. So this past week I sat down and I started watching LA Gang Wars. I started watching documentaries, and I was on Netflix, I was on YouTube, and I was just trying to understand, what is it like to wake up in the morning and not know if you're going to go back home and be a child?
Well, every child has a rite of passage that they should be given at birth in terms of their ability to come and go. I just want to emphasize the fact that not all children are involved in violence and gang activity. Even at the gang level, you have people that are in the gang that are active with the violence, and then you have those that are probably followers or probably just newcomers. So what's going on today in our society is that they're putting a rubber stamp on a group of people that don't necessarily reflect the stamp that they're putting, and the stamp just says gang member or gang violence. So it's very easy to get taxpayers to be scared or get people to be afraid to come outside and participate in the redevelopment of our youth due to the fact that the overwhelming amount of stereotypical images that's personified and over the air and by various people who know nothing about the community. This level of violence that we're dealing with now is no different than the level of violence in the 1960s. And with the help of myself, many other people in the gang truce community and great parents, brothers like Tony Muhammad and other organizations, peace organizations, we have brought the murder rate down here in Los Angeles to the 1960s crime rate level. So with that in mind, every ounce of effort that we put in is worth the effort that we put in regards to the outcome of our children. Sometimes we need to just stop and just grab one of the main instigators in a gang and just pull them to the side and converse with them about some of the things that you expect from your child, and ask him to kind of be a guardian in a sense to prevent your child from developing not into him but into something that may be worse than him.
So you're talking about peer accountability even. or peer support.
Peer support, peer accountability, and then, there's a victim's statement that should be acknowledged here too, because overall, all of them are victims of some, extremely serious circumstances. And, I grew up here in New York. I grew up in New York and Los Angeles, and I watched the gang situation evolve in New York, and I also watched the cocaine thing slay Abel here in Los Angeles. So with that information in mind, I watched the grandfathers of some of these children go through some extremely interesting circumstances in order to survive. The educational system here is not the best in the world. There's not many opportunities for parks. Most of our children are short 5 miles of state park in order to go out and stretch out and stuff. So they're really isolated in such a way that you get on a street that has a 30-year history of violence, and then you come outside and that new cop who just came here from Orange County stop you from crossing the street because you jaywalked. He puts your name on a little index card, and then he asks you what's your nickname. And so if your nickname is Little Bust 'em Up, then he puts that on it, and he asks you what street you live on. You say 75th, and somebody got shot. Then that, in his mind, that's where you're from. But your parents know nothing about that. But so basically what I'm saying is that you pick the gang for your child based on your movement that you have in terms of where you live.
Oh, wow. These kids today, I fall in love with them, and then like yours, I want to acknowledge something that you said, that not every child is gang affiliated.
No,
right?
No, man.
So, but they live in the communities, and so I would think that the threat of something just happening, even random, could be frightening. I mean, just watching documentaries, and I know this is the documentaries, and I hate seeing things like that because I feel like this like bougie mom going, oh my God, I saw it on television. But the kids and the people who are working with the kids in the specific high school, which was an extension high school for children, was like sort of their last resort. They were saying most of these children are suffering from PTSD. They know that they could die at any moment. They said that a lot of their friends died before the age of 23, 25 years old. And I can't even imagine that. I think of a kid being, this one child in particular they were talking about was in 9th grade. 9th grade, you're having fun, you're trying to acclimate to high school, and you're saying things like, oh, he liked you and he didn't like you, and it's all fun to me. That's not what these children are dealing with. So how are we, based on what you're working on with the organizations you're working with, how are we talking to the kids in the street? How are you capturing the audience?
Well, first and foremost, you have to speak to the children in the language in which they understand. And oftentimes as adults, who we assume that we know everything and we're not trendy enough to keep up with the times, because we drain the fountain of youth in such a way that we only extrapolate negative energy and negative conversation. But if you engage in a conversation that reflects their daily lives and then kind of make that conversation reflect some of the things that you've experienced, then there's a common thread there. But the majority of the children that I talk to know what direction to go in, and they're aware of the circumstances around them. But on the contrary, there's a element of fear, based on the fact that this has been exacerbated in the media, it's been exacerbated in the classrooms, it's been put in their mind in such a way that they even believe that they have PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. And mind you that we've had more unfortunate homicides here in Los Angeles to the total of 15 to 20,000 people than all the wars combined that the United States is fighting today. So with those type of crimes that we've had, most of the people that fight, that are medics in the military, have trained at Martin Luther King Hospital because of the level of violence that was taking place in Watts, South Central Compton, Inglewood, the South Bay, and as far as Venice Beach. So there's a climate of fear that, again, is almost like a placebo to the children. They don't know if it's real or fake, but they just know that they suffer from it. And in Los Angeles, not many people smile, but then there's another life out there west of Sepulveda, so that you have to teach our children that he that controls your thinking controls your movement, as said by great men of ours. And if all you know is your street, that's as far as you're going to go. So we have to start taking them to other parts of the world, because honestly, if you ask the average young person anything about the civil rights movement or anything about science or anything like that, they really don't know. And one other observation that I made from my own street clinical perspective is that with the invent of the internet, there's no longer a need for people to express themselves on paper. So therefore, we don't know how to develop their characteristics in terms of how they think, or in terms of what they may be thinking, or processing, or the punctuation chart, or even just your penmanship. It's like if you're just clicking with your thumbs all day, when do you ever get a chance to use your penmanship?
Yeah.
So that adds up to academics. That adds up to processing and thinking.
There's just certain raffinations that come with engaging with the kinesthetic world. Right. So you touch, you taste, you feel, you engage. It becomes real to you. So a lot of the stuff that I feel that all of us, not even just this one isolated group or that, we're all engaged digitally. So it's not real. A lot of times, I mean, people have made conscious decisions to unplug or to use the actual resource of technology as a tool and not a lifestyle. But on the most part, we're sort of disconnected. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back here in Tina Speaks. We're going to continue the conversation with Malik Spellman. I want you to know who he is. This is not just a chit-chat here. This man is qualified to have this conversation. We'll be right back with you. Okay, we're here with Malik Spellman. And Malik, let everyone know who you are. We've just jumped into this conversation. And before the show, you started to talk to me about some things that I don't know if you saw my face. I was shocked. Like, I could have caught flies that whole time.
Wow.
I never heard of anything like that in my life. You hear about it in Indonesia and India, all this stuff about body parts and selling body parts. You're talking about in Atlanta. So before we even get into that, can we talk about who you are? I want them to know who you are, that you're qualified to have this discussion.
Thank you for the undeserved accolades. I'm truly a reflection of yourself and many others. And some of the work that I've attempted to do along with others have been along the line of resurrecting the mindset of black people as a whole and urban people collectively. I've been involved with the gang truce for many years with the help of some of my friends who are no longer with us, Bo Taylors and other people like Looney, who's from around this neighborhood, and Ty Stick and Flip and different people who America never thought would participate in such a anti-violence campaign after being victims of such poverty and oppression. I had a show on A&E called LA Gang Wars Peacemaker. I've been a reporter for Los Angeles here, Fox 11 News, Good Day LA for many years, doing weekly vignettes, showing the world that there's more to our communities other than violence and drugs. There's a lot of black urban professionals that live here who have made collective contributions to this society on a large scale. And I've pretty much been in Hollywood trying to get the message out about the social eradication, the social annihilation of our youth from a collective standpoint, whether it be from their culture or it be their physical being or their spiritual absence in some instances. I just try to reinforce some of the traditional concepts that we have as black people, first and foremost, in order to resurrect a new generation of leaders.
Well, what we do to some is not sexy, but I find it very, very sexy, right? We have a website that most of you are familiar with called hopesocially.com. And whatever we're doing here, we have a team of people. Dr. Frances Copeland, who I love, she is my director of education for Tina Speaks. We create the white papers, and we want to duplicate it, right? Because it's a digital age, we're able to sit there and say, okay, high school, I know you're not getting the money administratively, but here are companies that have already committed in your area to put X amount of dollars into your school, put X amount of dollars into the children in the community without really having to deal with some of the red tape of the corruption and everything else. But you said something before the show that just, literally blew my mind, and it was in reference to something that's in the news recently, a young man who was found dead. Could you rehash that story a little bit?
Yeah, unfortunately, of course, some of us may be familiar with the young man in Atlanta who was on the wrestling team, and consequently they alleged that he dropped his shoe inside a mat that was standing 90 degrees perpendicular, in which he was upside down. They found his body somehow or another later on, and the family had the funeral and then had the body exhumed and noticed that the brains, the internal body parts and stuff like that were missing, and that the young man's body was stuffed with newspaper from the sales paper from the local communities. And the family's outraged. You can probably read about it in The Final Call, or you can see it on CNN Live. It's almost the equivalent of a Trayvon Martin situation, and that's why I was trying to talk to you earlier about the fact that oftentimes when we were young, our mother used to say, you put on clean socks and underwear so when you go out, God forbid, if you get hit by a car, which was the number one crisis that we had to pretty much worry about, that you would get, the right respect when you get in the ambulance. Well, nowadays, if you don't dress your children accordingly and you continue to perpetuate the same ideologies and look, then when your children become victims of violence, they have a perspective, a code, a hidden code that the ambulance will not attend to the children or the victim until the police come to secure the area. Once the police come, their main priority is to interrogate the person because they're not medical assistants about what happened. The ambulance main priority is, it's almost like a two-party check. The ambulance wants to know if you have red or blue cross, and the police want to know, are you red or blue Cripple Blood affiliated? Consequently, they're looking at your pants sagging, they're looking at your attire, and then they just leave you to nothing. So what happens is, in my humble opinion, and I think some would agree, some of these people's body parts are sold before they even hit the ground. For example, the DMV solicits you for your body parts. And then you have people who are buying skin and kidneys and, hair and stuff like that from our young people who are dying at an alarming rate. They had another situation in Atlanta where Grady Hospital, I had a body of a black child in which all the skin came up missing, off the cadaver.
That is just, probably a completely different show. But that blew my mind because when I think about some of the stuff that I do from my bird's eye perspective, we worked with an organization called antihuman.org, and they're global. So out of England, Vanita Patel focuses on recovering children out of sexual slavery, right? And recovering children from those type of situations, but internationally. Then I heard a story from a very good friend of mine where her daughter was actually kidnapped off of a private school campus in Georgia. And she recovered her child. She was one of those not my child type moms and strapped herself down and got her child from a pimp. So these things come so close to home. And when, like you were saying, the media paints a certain picture, this one paints a certain picture, but it's horrifying to me that this is something that even the children may have in their subconscious. How do you focus on school? How do you focus on doing well in a society that seems to be completely against you?
Well, what happens is you become in some instances with the school system, you become a functioning illiterate, or you become a functioning addict, or you become a person that just functions better under violent situations. I think the number one thing that we're doing wrong with this new generation is that we're assuming that they don't know, and then we're assuming at the same time that they do know.
Yes.
So once you put both of those assumptions together, then the strangest dichotomy that comes out of that is an antisocial behavior from an individual that you didn't expect that to come from. But because most of the children today are victims of drugs from the 80s and antisocial behavior and pontificating in such a way that it makes them appear to be hardcore, it's not really who they are.
Yeah.
Who they are is who you make them. Who they are is who the example of them that you pretend to be.
Yeah.
So when you find someone that's a negative person, you try to be that positive person. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't have a humble beginning. I grew up in New York. I grew up on the trains. I went to school with Fishburne and all them. You know, I did my share of things in life. I went to prison here in Los Angeles. There's a saying here in LA, you come on vacation, you leave on probation. You know, I know about the brothers that are in Pelican Bay doing 23 and a half hours a day locked up with no type of sunlight coming to them, where they're cutting their biceps off and their personal private parts because they've been isolated for many years. There's many levels of conversation that needs to be had, but the root of why we have our children the way they are is not predicated on the fact that there's no father in the house. It's kind of predicated on the fact that during the 60s, the social worker would not allow fathers to be in the house if you wanted to receive those benefits.
Yeah.
Or color TV for that matter.
Yeah.
So now that you have a new era where they don't allow the father in the house, and the new relationship police is the child support, then what happens is the television is no longer the color television is no longer the social amenity of all amenities, but the internet and the digital divide that's in your house is what's taking place.
You said a mouthful with that. I mean, a lot of our initiatives right now are, yes, we did work with Compton High School, but we're really looking at what we call the final mile intervention, which is the connectivity to the home, making sure that children have access, computers and different things. And, you know, there's a whole different culture, a whole different lifestyle. Of course, I think they argued, this board that I'm working with, for about 2 hours about they're going to steal the computers, they're going to sell the computers. But how do we bridge the gap so that they even have the opportunity? I was raised in the quote-unquote projects. You know, people make fun of me because it's Tarrytown, New York. But all we had was access. I had access to things. And my mother was a single mom, and she did whatever she had to do to get us to Lincoln Center, to get us to the Harlem Dance Company, Harlem Dance Theater, to get us to the Apollo, to see people that look like us doing something different. And I'm one person, and I know that what my great gift is right now is not so much that I want to do all this hard work, because I tried that. I tried all this hard work, and I was doing it by myself, and I got burnt out. We have the blessing of the media. We have the blessing of sending the signal out. We have the blessing of sending out a wide-range signal that could possibly harness the people who are like-minded to want to develop program and to help our children. So that's the whole purpose of this conversation. So I know it's an ongoing conversation. It's an ongoing thing that we're going to be doing. But our commitment, as even as a little network here, is to be the example. We may not be able to change the whole world, right? But I always tell people I'm not called to change the whole world. I'm changing my world and becoming very contagious in the process.
Right.
And hopefully other people will want to do the same. We're going to take a quick break on Tina Speaks. We'll be back here with Malik Spellman.
Do you know how a lost heart feels? till you learn the meaning of the blue, till you love to love you had to lose. You don't know what love is. You don't know how lips hurt until you kissed and had to pay the cost, until you flipped your heart and you had lost. You don't know what love is. Do you know how a lost heart feels? Do you know how it feels? The thought of reminiscing, and how lips that taste the tears, lose their taste for kissing. You don't know how hearts burn, but love that cannot live yet never dies, until you faced each dawn with sleepless eyes. Well, you don't know what love is. Oh, you don't know what love is. Oh, you don't know what love is. You don't know
As is true to form with the Tina Speaks Show, we have one more guest joining us, Minister Tony Muhammad of upfest.org. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure. It's an honor to be here with you.
He's been here before, and we had so much fun. But Malik, you guys know each other, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
You kidding me? Street soldiers always
Yeah.
know one
Trenches
another.
together
That's
for a
right.
long time.
You know, and that blesses me. It blesses me because, again, I sort of came into this conversation from the outside looking in, being sort of raised in the suburbs, and you know, my brother's in the studio watching today. My younger brother Kevin Dean, whom I love, and we used to sort of joke about some of these things that we were suburban. You know, where other kids were watching New Jack Swing, we were watching. You know, I was watching Steel Magnolias because my family's from Virginia, and we are Southern bred, not dirty South. You know, that type of thing was true for me, but I had the engagement of it. I had the engagement because of the hip hop culture. I had the engagement of it working in the music industry with my brother and other artists that were like, there's something different. Why can't you just speak differently? I remember getting in trouble because they would speak to me a certain way. Say, is that a word? Could you
Right.
spell that? I don't get it. You know, because I came from a mom who said to me, your language will locate you. I don't care if we live in the projects are not in you. Pronounce those consonants. Because your language is going to elevate you or bring you someplace else. And I was very serious about how I spoke. Then, as I'm walking along and I'm realizing we're here sort of to make an impact, I'm sort of irrelevant, actually. Because if I'm sitting here being almost snobby about it, how am I really blessing the life? How am I really being a light? How is that young artist going to look to me and say, Miss Tina, I trust you, you know, with my psychology, not my career, not my money, with my well-being, with my safety. That was more important to me. That became more important to me. And then being a mom, which is my favorite job in the whole world, right? I love being a mom, which is probably why I have all these sort of spare kids, right? All over the place. Just they call me mom. They say, those are your children? So yeah, energetically, spiritually, those are my children. And you saw my children. Tony Muhammad came with me to Compton as my guest, right? And how many children did I have there?
Oh man, it seems to be hundreds there.
There was we went to 1,100 capacity.
Wow.
1,100 capacity, and he blessed us with bringing a special treat from his organization, which are the cars and the motorcycles and the riders. Kids lost their minds. And I didn't get a chance to tell you that the principal came to me right after, and she had tears in her eyes, and she said, "Thank you. People forget Compton."
Yeah.
That was everything to me.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Miss Tina, what are you going to do next?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just know that we have to get you guys moving. We just got to keep you moving, keep you motivated. You guys will do the rest. You're brilliant enough."
Mm-hmm.
So here we come to the part of the show where I'm looking at solutions, and if you can hang out with us for a little while longer.
Sure.
Yeah, I would love that. We're going to be transitioning into, for me, what saved my life was music.
Okay.
Being a musician, right?
Yeah.
And loving my music and being able to practice for hours. And because I studied music and I was forced to study Handel and Bach and Chopin and Schubert, I thought of Europe. I thought of Paris. I thought of places that I've never been before inside of my little community. But in my mind, I was there, and when I was old enough to go, I went right away. I want to share that with our kids, and I don't know how to do that without organizations like you.
Mm-hmm.
We need to come together so I can figure out ways to bring them places, because I believe a mind expanded will never return to the same size again.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's only 5 or 6 kids, they can at least tell another 5 or 6 kids, right?
Absolutely.
So can we talk about your organizations that you represent here so that people who are watching us can hear about solutions, and then I can sort of design what we're going to do together moving forward. I did that last time. As we were talking, I'm like, I know what we can do. Here's our partnership. Here's our action. Here's our action. Here's our action. And I went right to work at it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what you do.
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to say I'm honored to be here with Brother Muhammad, who's been a soldier in the community for quite some time on many different levels of gang intervention prevention. He'll probably never expound on most of them, but the majority of them are at high levels that people don't necessarily know about in regards to brothers that you talk to that may not be of the adolescent age or may not be at that age where you can make that impression. And it's a very difficult job, and I salute you for it because it's something that needs to be done, and it takes a strong voice and a strong person to go out and not racketeer on our people, but yet give them the opportunity to express themselves freely without any reservation and getting results. So I salute Mr. Hamid for that. It's not a difficult job, but it's not an easy job, but the pay is
That's
great.
right.
You know, me personally, I don't have an organization. I represent whatever is good for black people and poor people as a whole. Personally, I've been involved with several organizations from Hands Across Watts all the way down to local churches. I just think that is something that needs to be done, and when you have great role models and great examples like Mr. Muhammad and the family that he comes from in regards to his spiritual beliefs and stuff like that and the discipline that they have, there's a line of respect that you just have to maintain, you know, because it came before us in regards to religion and with Muhammad and Jesus Christ and Jehovah and all that. So I say that to say I wanted to expound on one thing that you mentioned about being from the suburbs. You know, I at some point came from a wealthy family in New York, and I abandoned that particular lifestyle like Buddha did because I didn't want any parts of it.
You were Siddhartha?
Right, but if you look, and I grew up right behind Lincoln Center. I mean, like literally I watched them build Lincoln Center. I used to sneak in, listen to opera as well. I went to Brandeis High School, which is right next door, and right next door to that was Lincoln Academy where Larry Fishburne went. We were all friends. But if you notice, Frederick Douglass was part of the bourgeois, and those people were the correct black people that accepted, as Minister Farrakhan and Tony Muhammad and them expressed, the challenge to change in regards to being academically successful. And oftentimes in our society, we're stereotypically at a disadvantage when it comes to giving each other accolades for advancing to the level of consciousness that we need to take us to the next level. So I salute you for having an academic sense and an academic desire to be better than what they offered us, because we have to buy into a new concept. And I truly believe that with your experience and your desire to take your mind beyond the neighborhood and go to Paris and to go to these different places in the world, that right there is a reflection for our children in order to let them have that seed planted like someone planted it in your mind. So salute yourself and your parents for giving you the opportunity to be educated in such a way that now the education that you obtained is a necessity for what we're dealing with now, solution-based
results-focused
conversations and focus. And then we need to come back to getting to the Black Defamation League that we should create in order to facilitate holding people accountable for the words they use against
We
us,
need
and
both.
then the stereotypical images that's portrayed about black people and poor people in general.
So we need both. We need both. I'm an actionist, right? I sort of made up the word. In other words, I may not necessarily be a social activist in the traditional sense of the word, but I want to work with the activists. I want to work with the nonprofit organization who are activists. Why? Because the activists are there to stop the offense at the point of contact. That's an activist. I want to rally private industry, media, around it, not from just, ooh, this is happening, but where's your money? Put your money in it. Put your money in it. Put your resources in it. See, what I really believe when we were doing Social Media Week, I was praying before God and I asked him, I said, what is the soundbite that's true, not just a buzz or a gimmick? What's true for change? And I looked at the word hope. And for me, it was broken down. First, ask yourself, how does this content make you feel? How does it make you feel? If you don't feel anything, then it's not yours. Don't pretend it's yours. Then you're just going to be doing it because Susie's doing it or your organization is doing it. It's giving you some kind of social positioning. It's just not true. Don't lie to yourself internally. But if you feel that in your gut, in your knower, then next own it. So I feel this and it's hurting me somewhere, somehow, where I don't have a way to describe it or explain it. It's living inside of my body and I want to do something about it. That's when you know that you can go to the P, which is personalization. I will find out if I can do it through my company. I'm going to do it through my community. I'm going to do it through my church, through the people who are already doing it. Maybe I can write a check. Maybe I can physically go. Maybe I can get a whole bunch of other people aware from a digital perspective and then execute. To me, that's hope in action. And that's what I want to challenge people to do. I want people to use that content in the context of true hope in action. And that's what you guys do every day. Yeah. Now, Minister Tony, you and I are going to be together on Sunday, all day long. So I want people to know who you are. Tell people about the organization, about the event.
Yeah, thank you, Tina, first of all. Giving honor to Almighty God and all of the righteous servants who've ever come in the line of divine. I'm honored to be here at this pivotal moment in our history. I happen to represent a man who, in my humble opinion, is very Christ-like. That man, for me, is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, of which that's my spiritual representation. But because of the universality of the work that I try to do, I try to represent him not from a narrow viewpoint, but from a viewpoint that can encapsulate all, no matter what your beliefs are. So I have to start off with this young brother right here, because, you know, righteous men and women who do great things don't stroke themselves.
That's right.
And this brother Malik, the first exposure I ever got to media here in Los Angeles was through him. Because he worked at that time for one of the most predominant ABC, NBC, CBS channels. And he would do things with the cameras that no other, I would say, journalist, anchor person would do. And it was through Malik Spellman that many in the gang culture got exposed to the world. Wow. And got exposed for the righteous work that they have done. So this brother is one of the most giant peacemakers in all of Los Angeles. So, I mean, him coming from the place that he came from in his development as a child to come to the bottomless pits of hell to help our people is very tantamount to the character of Brother Malik, because when you work with poor and oppressed people, it's a thankless job. In fact, they take you to be suspicious before they honor you.
Yeah.
And he's taken the hits. I've seen his life being threatened for what he believed in and trying to unite us in Los Angeles. And he's done a wonderful, wonderful job. So I just had to say that. My work is that same work. Is that I represent a man whose job it is in this dispensation of time is the fulfillment of prophecy. And I think all too often we shun from spirituality, but I cannot run from my spiritual work and the spiritual aspect of what I do, because I know that 75% of what was written in the Bible was not history. It was a prophecy to be fulfilled at a time called the last day, and we're living in that time. And so therefore, I am a disciple of a man who believes in the resurrection of our people. And I'm unapologetic for wanting to help black people. You know, I'm unapologetic. Like my Jewish brethren, he's unapologetic about his Jewishness. He's unapologetic about making sure that there's never a Holocaust. And if they feel that you are one that's going to take them back to that, they go in the attack mode.
You know, it was a Jewish man who mentored me when I was young in my career, and he said to me something that was so poignant. He said, Tina, we take care of our children. Take care of yours.
Sure. Sure.
And I never thought about it from the, I never really thought about it until I walked away from it and I realized, wait a second, he wouldn't be telling me that if it wasn't an issue.
Sure.
It wasn't an issue. And as I became older, like I used to tell my grandmother, oh, I already know that already. I know that
Sure.
already. She would say, live a little while, baby, and tell me what you know.
Sure.
Right? When I got older, I was able to say what I knew, that we need to take care of our babies.
Sure.
We need to take care of our children. We need to take care of them across the board. And my small work in the area of personal development, life coaching, and all that area, and that commitment to peak performance. That's my commitment. Even just this past week, I spent time just meditating, and I do that sometimes. I'll wipe the board, I'll do nothing, and I'll just go into meditation. I go into restoration, and I go to God, and I check in. What am I doing? Where are my keys to success? What are my markers? It's sort of like a performance report. And because I found myself feeling too busy. I'm too busy, right? God's not a liar, so we have perfect days, right? Perfect amount of days of the year, perfect days in a week, perfect hours in a day. If I'm saying I don't have enough time, then either it's an imperfect creation or my schedule's imperfect. So I'd rather go back and wipe the
Sure.
board and figure it out. And I asked myself the question, what is the most important thing that I do? What is the most important conversation that I have? What is the most fulfilling conversation that I have? I'm a mom. At the end of the day, I'm a mother. And to really look at the problem that we're having in our communities, it's like that song, sometimes I feel like a motherless child. That a lot of these kids, when I look at them, I'm not giving them books, I'm not giving them materials, I'm going, I love you, I see you, I hold you, I acknowledge you.
Sure.
And that's everything to them.
Sure. You're absolutely right. And I was sent here. See, my story is a little different. And that's the beauty of all of us being
We're all
here together,
different.
because I don't believe that nothing happens by chance. To know that your upbringing in the suburbs, and to know where my brother came from, mine was opposite. I came from one mother who had 10 children out of poverty. But at the same time, my physical prowess and my athletic ability got me through school, so I got educated, quote unquote, educated. But my whole role was different. As I left corporate America, you know, to help Minister Farrakhan, he said, brother, I need you to help me in an area, because when the West Coast come up, the urban areas of America will change. He said, and the West Coast will fulfill that part of Scripture where it reads, in the last day, the sun would be seen rising in the West. He said, and this is the best and most powerful generation we've ever produced. They just don't have shepherds. He said, and you're going to have to go into the bottomless pits of hell, and I want you to help me to unite the soldiers. He said, because this generation is fearless, they brave, they refuse to live a life of hypocrisy. They're not going to hide what their parents hid. They doing it in the open. He said, but they're ripe. The problem is they have been made to believe that we're one another's enemy. And that's where we have to come in and change that. So as a result of talking to brothers like Malik, one thing I recognize through all of us being here together, Jesus said it like this. He said, there's a coat and an ass or a donkey tied together.
Yeah.
Go and untie them, for the Lord have need of them. Minister Farrakhan said to me, brother, you know what the coat represent? Because both the coat and the donkey is from the horse family. They just got two different attitudes. He said that the coat represents the quality of the horse. It's the most intelligent of the horse family. You see, and the rider handles a colt different from a donkey. He said, but that donkey is the burden bearer. It can carry the weight. And so he said, what we need the best of our black minds, the colts. But if the colts forget the hood and lose their ghetto pass, see, we can't take these fine educations and go look down on our people.
That's
We
right.
have to take these fine educations we got and go get up under them and lift them.
And we gotta
so
be
they
real
have to
about
see
it.
the relevancy of a black lawyer and a black doctor who don't come back in their Mercedes and in their fine homes looking down on the hood. Because one thing about the streets, they can tell when you got the spirit that you think you better than them. And that's what my role is. But since I'm in both houses,
That's right.
you could take me to the boardrooms, I could talk to the bankers. You could take me in the hood and I could talk to the bangers. But somebody got to know how to bring those two together.
And see, that's what I believe, and I think we talked about this last time. We're going to wrap up the first hour of this show, and then we're going to go into the next. We have more guests to come and talk about some solutions in community,
Sure.
Including UpFest, which is happening this Sunday on the 27th, and it's going to be fabulous, fabulous. Upfest.org, go check it out. Go check it out. But one of the things that I recognize for myself in my little journey, so though I was raised in the suburbs, technically it was the projects. I was raised around a lot of wealth, technically. I mean, we were raised in the same community as the Rockefellers, and, you know, they were all part of Tarrytown. But my mother was a single mom, and the girl next to me was pregnant 15, the other girl was on crack. So there were opportunities on both sides, and I refused, me personally, to deny either. This is just me. This is who I am. This is my journey. This is my experience, and I may not relate to everyone, but I relate to what I relate to, and hopefully, I'm not going to be able to talk to every person. I know that, Mr. Muhammad Malik, but I do know if I'm real, it'll resonate with people, and hopefully, it'll make them
You see,
want to
that's all
do
that
the
matters.
same.
It's not your language, it's your energy.
I want them to go, you know, let me take this mask off. Let me take the gimmick off. Let me just get real with and that is what's going to touch the child. It's going to touch across the generational lines, the racial lines, because at the end of the day, we're human.
That's right.
We're folk. We're just folk.
I love it.
Just trying to go day by day and live the lives that we know that God, in our hearts, we know this in our hearts, God intended. Okay, we're going to close up hour number 1 here of Tina Speaks. We'll be right back. Thank you for being with us. See you in a moment.
God bless you, Mr. Muhammad. God is great.